All righty, boys and girls, fresh off a haircut, fresh off a workout. You got your boy Alex here, and the man who was gonna be solo, Christopher Condit, your American villain voices, and as always, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. I have no idea how we're gonna edit this together. Chris started a solo reaction pod, and I ran in at the last minute. I thought he might be on. My Chris Condit senses were tingling. I knew StreamYard was up out there somewhere, so I had to come join. We are here to react to the sale of another one of Villa's own, Jacob Ramsey. Chris, I don't really know what you had planned for this. I'm obviously in here at the last second. I'm kind of rambling at this point until you just stop me and take over with what we're going to talk about here.
That's all I was really going to do was ramble. I had some thoughts in my head. I didn't even write them down. I just want to know, though, is like the Chris bat signal a bald guy with like a rimmed glasses sort of thing that goes in the sky? Is that what we see when you know I'm on the stream by myself?
It's just an egg.
So I think what I started off with, and we don't have to worry about the other recording. I already got rid of it. It's just you and me in here, bud. We don't have to worry about my solo pod that recorded for about a minute. The big thing that happened here is Jacob Ramsey was sold for a rumored 39 or 40 million pound, depending on who you're reading, rising to 43 or 44. Again, depending on who reported it. And I think I've seen reactions split among Villa fans. A lot of people seem to be upset. And I think there are two reasons for that. One, the reports that Villa aren't going to be able to use this money to spend on more transfers this financial year is part of it. The other thing I think that people are upset about is he's one of Villa's own, as you said. He's a local guy. He's been with the club since he was like 6. And people see that as sort of like the death of football, the modernization of football. And that is... I've got another kid making noise. Hold on.
While you do that, I'll talk. Yeah. They see this as the modern football. It's amazing what we're doing this evening. This is what we do for all of you, our fans. So, listen, Jacob Ramsey going for 40 million. There are two ways that we can talk about it. One is the FFP SCR kind of conversation and what Villa have to do, and then there is purely the what was his fit and what are Villa losing. So to get 40 some odd million for what I think all of us believe to be our second, if not third best left winger after Gasson, who we just bought, and probably even Morgan Rogers and or Emi Buendia, and a guy who was particularly injury prone over the last few seasons, that's a good bit of business. And if you could turn around and reinvest that in the squad, you can buy, in the case of Gasson, who was roughly 5 to 10 cheaper.
Yeah, about 10 cheaper.
Better player. So from a purely squad building perspective, it makes sense. And when you also consider the fact that at least the reports out there are Jacob Ramsey agitated for this move. He wanted to go to Newcastle. I think he wanted to move up the depth chart. I read today, again, take it with a grain of salt, but read today that he wanted a reported 125,000 a week. Villa could only go up to 85 with a match appearance bonus. And frankly, for your second or third choice left winger, I don't think that he should be on 125,000 a week. It also makes sense from just a squad balance perspective. He wanted out. So you can talk about the death of football and Villa needing to do this from an FFP perspective, but it also isn't like we kicked him out the door, whether Villa had FFP issues or not. And I should just say financial issues, because really this is more a conversation about UEFA and SCR. But even if Villa didn't have UEFA financial issues, Jacob Ramsey probably goes anyway because Jacob Ramsey wants to go. So now we're talking about the difficulty and the frustration of the fact that Villa can't reinvest this money in anybody else. John Townley is on record saying, Villa have a net spend of negative 75 million, whereas all their other top 6 rivals are like minus 200 something, the way that Arsenal are. And that's just that doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel like the rules are fit for purpose when it comes to ensuring that teams can stay stable, are allowed to remain competitive. It seems very much skewed in favor of the haves as opposed to the have-nots.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I think, like, my thought is you sort of have to remove emotion as much as possible, which is a ridiculous thing to ask of fans, but you do. Because if you remove the emotion of Jacob Ramsey being a lifelong Villa player and from Brum and all those things, and don't forget the magical season he did have 3 years ago, where he had 20 goal involvements, and he was healthy. He started 31 games that year. So since then, the inability to stay on the pitch and his relative ineffectiveness compared to the other players playing along with him in that position or in front of him in that position, I think if you can look at that analytically and say, we got 40 million for that player, that's good. Now, here's what I will say. And I have to credit my brother Mark, because he was the one, when we were talking about it, he was the one that gave me this line, or gave me this idea. If Jacob Ramsey can play up to his full potential as a player, then that 40 million is a steal for Newcastle. If he's unable to, if he's the player that he's been for the last 2 seasons for Aston Villa, then this is absolutely a great bit of business for Villa. So I think it's more likely to be the latter than the former. I think it's more likely that JJ doesn't play up to the player that we know is in there, but he's just unable to stay on the field. So on the pitch. So I think 40 million for that player is a smart move. And again, it's a crowded. You and I talked about it in the pod we released last night. That was and is our best position depth wise, is that front three, and Unai Emery is more interested in players that can play across the front three instead of being locked into one position.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, after that year, I think Spurs were in for Ramsey, and the rumored price was like 65 million. So like that player is in there. And I agree with Mark that probably at his best, if he fulfills his potential, he's worth more than the 40 million. I don't know if I say steal, but like definitely worth more than that. I'm with you though. We've seen enough of a body of work outside of that one spectacular season with a very spectacular manager who was primed to get the best out of him, that he's probably more at the 40 sub 40 kind of level. I don't anticipate him to start for Newcastle ahead of Anthony Gordon or Anthony Alanga, so he's coming off the bench there as well. And yeah, he gets his money, but I don't know that he's necessarily advancing his career this way. The last point that I want to make before we talk about the implication on sort of Villa's lineup, and we can talk about Saturday as well real quick, is just that I understand the people who say game's gone, or this is the death of modern football. There was a quote in the group chat, which I know you are no longer in due to your technical difficulties, that this is what the academy is for, sell for huge fees, and someone else bemoaned that fact. They were like, well, that shouldn't be the case. I agree. You should want to be able to see a guy come up through the academy, whether he's from Birmingham or, we buy him and bring him up from London as a teenager or something like that. It doesn't matter. You want to be able to root for guys that come up through your system. And right now the rules are designed in such a way that those players are just money trees, and you're not really developing them with the intent of them making a long-term impact in the first team, because the second that you get a good fee for them, it is more beneficial for you to sell them on and bring on 2 or 3 other players of similar quality, particularly if they are English, given the way that those rules work in terms of squad building. That's while that is the reality. And so I understand the sentiment of, yeah, based on the rules, that is what the academy is there for. I also understand the romantic of, wanting to root for essentially the soccer version of the late 90s Yankees with the core four all coming up through the farm system, right? That's the dream of having people that are from your city, your system, that have been brought up in like the Barca team with everyone coming through La Masia. Like that's the dream of sport. So this could be another kind of check mark in that game's gone column. I'm not willing to go that far just because of what I've read JJ Ramsey wanted in that situation. But like, I understand the macro perspective of it just sucks to feel like we continually have to sell the JJ Ramseys, eventually the Morgan Rogerses, but the Oshkins, all these guys that are ultimately going to come up through the system and probably wind up playing elsewhere. You're just continuing this trend of us being totally on it tonight.
I think that the bigger point is that the JJ had a contract in front of him. He didn't sign it. He wanted to move. So there's no sense in like getting worked up about that. It's business. It's business. So in the end, I do think this is a smart piece of business by the club, and it positions well for the future to further balance the books, get more in line with SCR, UEFA SCR. And we're going to see now, I mean, again, I think we have to remove the idea that this player, is local and therefore should stay here. Like you said, like you got to remove that, because even in a pre-modern era, that didn't exist to the extent that our minds think it did.
Right. Totally true. Yeah.
So, players have been moving since like the early 1900s. There were players being illegally transferred with fake jobs, to play for clubs that didn't have, or that they didn't live in that area and all that sort of stuff. So this is nothing new. We need to ditch that notion. But in terms of the immediate impact on the lineup, it looks like the deal is not going to get finalized soon enough legally for him to play, for JJ to play against Villa on Saturday. So the lineup, I think, from Villa's perspective changes, but nothing on Newcastle's side changes. Who do you think that Unai Emery puts out at the left wing now? That's the real question. Or what change does he make to the lineup?
It's someone who we didn't discuss much in our preview pod, actually. Might be a miss on us, but I think John McGinn comes in. I think that's probably the easy straight swap. So, we said that Gasson or JJ would be starting in that left mid if JJ signed a new deal. I guess I was kind of right when I said that Villa wouldn't sell him until Saturday evening. They're kind of holding out the technicalities until that does come to pass. But I think that John McGinn is an easy straight swap, knows the position, obviously provides a little bit more defensive solidity over there. And as club captain, honestly, probably would have been shoehorned into the starting lineup anyway by Unai Emery for the first match of the season. So that's what I see happening on Saturday. You can tell me if you think differently, but I think the only other thing that I'll add is that long term, my rating for this position group starts to go down. I get particularly a little nervous about January, February when Gasson goes to AFCON, and now all of a sudden we're looking pretty thin. We're either moving Morgan Rogers out from where he's most effective in the center of the park out to the left wing and bringing in an Emi Buendia, or playing John McGinn there, who can't necessarily combine and get in behind defenses the way that some of these other players can, including Jacob Ramsey. So I think that becomes a weak position. Rumors of Leon Bailey going to Roma or somewhere in Turkey, I think it's Besiktas now. over the past 24 hours. That also then concerns me a little about the right wing, maybe a little less, just because we have Malin and Gasson can play out there as well. But again, getting rid of all the backups that we have with all the matches that we're going to play, it feels like we're getting a little thin there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last night being our deepest position. It still probably is, but it is definitely thinner now. But I think when you get a fee like that for a player who's been unable to stay on the pitch and stay healthy, you have, and who's pure profit, you have to take it. So I understand it, and Newcastle. I think if we look at the tea leaves here, the amount of smoke that was around this for the weeks that it was, I think it was Newcastle trying to see if they could bring that fee down, and Villa holding firm on their number, because they did eventually arrive at exactly what Villa asked for. So I think, or at least what's always been rumored Villa was asking for this player, for Jacob Ramsey. So again, my overall thought is good bit of business. I will always remember the player that Jacob Ramsey was for the season 3 years ago, where he was just on fire. And I do hope that his career progresses. Go well, JJ, and score and score against everybody but Villa. Be a great player for every other game, just not against us.
Yeah, we definitely wish him all the best. The last thing that I'll say as we kind of close this one out is just that maybe my bold prediction for the season now, my hottest take in need of cold water, at least from a Villa perspective, I'll say, is I wonder if this means that we're going to see a little bit more Jimo Aloba in and out of the lineup. Maybe this was done because Unai Emery feels like he's ready to take some of those back end minutes, the way that Lamar Bogard last year came in when we had a little bit of an injury issue and needed to rotate guys through. Maybe he's the one who gets the early season to kind of sink or swim.
I think that's a good call.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add on this?
No, I think we're good. This is quick emergency pod tonight.
Fun as always, my friend. Well, we will once again talk early next week about the Newcastle match, JJ Ramsey's new home. We will miss you, sir, but thanks for the 40 mil. Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.